Welcome to the Remembering Akron podcast. I'm your host, Derek Maxfield, and today my guest is Stephen Kossuth. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. So you grew up in Salamanca, I understand.
Yes.
And you lived there until when?
1961 we moved up here.
And why did your family move from Salamanca to the Akron area?
My mother's second husband was a truck driver, and he was based in Tonawanda. Mm-hmm. And that's too far to drive from Salamanca to Tonawanda to go to work.
I see that. Okay.
Yeah, so we moved up here.
Tell me about your parents.
My father died when I was 2. I don't know anything about him other than what my mother said. And
is that Frederick?
yes. He was known as Jack, which my grandson is named after him, Jack Tilbury.
Very nice.
From all indications, he was very well liked. He was a policeman in Salamanca. He died at 32 suddenly.
My goodness.
I believe it was internal stomach area. He never said anything. My mother said his family didn't believe in doctors, and after he passed away, when they cleared out his locker at the police station, he had all this over-the-counter stuff for belly aches. And I don't know whether it was an aneurysm or a ruptured appendix. They said if he lived through the night, he would probably survive, but he died about 3 in the morning, my mother said. So.
Well, that's too bad. And your mother is Irene?
Yes.
And what is her maiden name?
Her maiden name was Bachman. They were all from Salamanca.
They were all from Salamanca.
Yes.
Do you know how your parents met?
Yes. My mother worked in a stationery store in Salamanca. She lived 2 houses up from where my father lived, and one day she said when she was going home, he stopped and said, "Would you like a ride home?" And she said, "Sure." And after that, that's how that worked out.
Very nice. So you went to school in Akron?
Yes.
And graduated?
For the last 3 years, yes.
For the last 3 years, and
Right.
you graduated there in 1964.
Right.
Do you have any fond memories from high school?
Not particularly. Sometimes you don't remember a lot of stuff. You would think out of 3 years being there, you would remember more than you did. I played football there. We still have class reunions, and there's quite a few people that I went to school with that still live in the area, live right in town or within 25 miles or so. So we have quite a turnout.
What was the size of your graduating class? Do you remember?
It's between 100 and 110.
Okay.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
That's still fairly small school.
Yes, it is.
Now, immediately after graduating high school, you joined the Marine Corps.
Yes, I actually joined the Marine Corps in March. You could sign up ahead of time. I don't know what the advantage was. I hitchhiked to Buffalo somewhere, and I had to wait for the recruiter. He was at lunch, and when he came back, he says, "You want to join?" I go, "Yes." "Okay. 3 years or 4?" And I said to say, 4. What's another year? Well, it's another year in the Marine Corps, which can be a long time, although I had pretty easy duty after being wounded because you couldn't no longer infantry, so that was a good thing.
So why the Marine Corps? It sounds like you had your mind made up already.
I did, yes. I don't know, when we still lived in Salamanca, I don't know whether it was the uniform or there's a mystique about the Marine Corps. Some of it justified, not all of it, but some of it. Mm-hmm. And it's just strange. We talked with guys, it's like if you had to go back in the service tomorrow and you had to spend 20 years in, which service would you go in? You go, the Air Force, because they have the best of everything. And if they said, well, you have to go back in the service, but you'll be dead by midnight tomorrow, then you go back in the Marine Corps, because that's just how you feel.
I see.
Yeah.
Had you had family members that had served in the Marine Corps?
No, none. All my uncles and the older generation, World War II generation, they didn't go. None of them were in the service. But when it came time, the cousins in Vietnam, we all were in something. Navy, Air Force, Army, whatever.
I see.
We all went.
So even before you made up your mind to go in the Marines, there were some in the family that had signed up in one service or another.
Yes.
And were they motivated because of the Vietnam War?
I don't know. It was more of a thing I think you did in those days. you went into service, and actually probably in the back of your mind that if you didn't go in the service, you would be drafted.
I see.
Now you could still, even if you have a draft notice, you could sign up for a different service than who drafted you. What you had to be careful of, though, is if you didn't do that, I know one fellow in town here, he was drafted by the Army, and when he was standing in line there, a Marine came in and grabbed 6 or 8 of them for the Marine Corps.
Wow.
And he wasn't too happy with that.
No.
He lucked out, though. He was a machine gunner in Vietnam, and then when he found out that he had plumbing skills because his parents or his father ran a plumbing store, he got to be a plumber, so he didn't have to lug that machine gun around, and a little bit safer being a plumber than a machine gunner.
I guess. So at that time, so you were about 18 years old at that time.
Right.
Did you have political opinions? Were you following events in Vietnam or before that, the Korean conflict?
No, the Korean conflict I don't remember. The Vietnam thing, not really. It was very early. They really hadn't. When I graduated, I think they went in later. They landed troops later there. That's when then it just escalated.
You must remember the assassination of John Kennedy.
I do. I remember that. Yes.
Where were you at that time?
In school.
You learned about it in school.
Yes.
Did they cancel the rest of the day?
I don't recall. I don't believe so. I could remember somebody saying that one of the worries was in the interim between when he died and when the government got reorganized, that some other power, Russia, we thought would make a move on something, because that's a good time to do things if you're going to do that, but nothing happened, so.
Mm-hmm. But you were shocked by it, as everybody was.
Oh, yes, very much so.
Uh-huh. Did a lot of people in your family or those that you know like Kennedy, or didn't really have an opinion?
Didn't really have an opinion. I know my wife, she thought he was a great president. I never thought he was a great president. He was well liked. There's always a difference between being a great president and being well liked. They're different things.
They are, and I will tell you that I have never yet had a person say they didn't like John Kennedy.
Right.
Though I have had people make that distinction and say, but whether I think he was a good president is a different question.
Yes, I would say he was an average president.
Well, of course, he wasn't president for very long, was he? So you went into the Marine Corps, and immediately you became a rifleman from the start?
Not right from the start. I'll back up a little bit.
Yeah.
I had a bookkeeping teacher. His name is Mr. Walker. He's been gone a long time now. He was a Korean Marine. And he liked me. When he found out I was going in the Marines, he called me aside and said, okay, you think you know what's going to happen in boot camp. You don't. And he led me through it and said, this is what you must not do. You must not question their authority. You cannot win that. Don't do that. Bite your tongue. And I saw what happened to people that did that. And he was correct. And I know years later when I saw him, I said, I talked to him outside. I said, all these other kids here, they're teachers and their careers. And I said, I just work for the post office. He goes, well, no, you don't just work for the post office. But he says, you got to remember one thing, that we were and they were not, was United States Marines. So I always remembered that, because that always sticks no matter what you do. If you do a really bad thing, they will work that in that article in the paper that you were in the Marine Corps. If you do a really good thing that's not, you caught the biggest fish you ever caught from whatever lake, that will be worked in there somehow. If you were in the Army, or they don't never mention that, but that for some reason they do that. Yeah.
That's interesting. And so you had some good advice going in.
Yes, it was very helpful.
So you went to Paris Island.
Yes.
And you were there for boot camp for 6 weeks?
No, it was longer than that. It was at least 8 weeks. It might have even been a little bit longer. There was a hurricane, which curtailed a little bit of our activities. But
I'll bet.
Yeah. But at that time they had old World War II barracks we stayed at, dual, up and down. And the rifle range had cement whatever it called, cement or brick, whatever it was. So that was better to be in that. But the only time I almost got myself in trouble, but not quite. The drill instructor was okay. But the other drill instructors were not so good, and they said something about they would make us jump out the upstairs windows rather than use the stairs. I kind of made a little snicker. He said, "What are you laughing about?" I said, "Sir, if you jump out the second story window, you're going to break your legs." And he kind of, yeah, probably. And he just went on. But you can't, I got away with that one because lots of people I've seen do things and they didn't get away with it.
They didn't get away with it.
No.
So was that the toughest 8 weeks of your life?
Yeah, in your head. Physically, like I said, I had played sports and that, so I was fairly good shape. Yeah, it's not. That's not that any ordinary person could do if he put his mind to it. If his mind didn't give him a hard time. Harder training comes later after boot camp. Then you get into if you choose those lines, you get into harder.
I see.
Harder things, yes.
So how is it you went from your boot camp experience to becoming a rifleman?
Okay, well, I was assigned that MOS right out of boot camp.
I see.
But I didn't go right into the infantry. I went to a guard detachment in Kodiak, Alaska.
Alaska?
Yeah, for a year.
Did you choose that, or they chose that for you?
I don't remember, to tell you the truth. But anyways, that's where I went. And there's two problems with that. First problem is you're a year in a cool climate. The weather was about like here. We were on an island, we were on a Japanese current there, so we didn't have the 40 below that they had on the mainland. But that's the first bad thing. The second bad thing is if you're going to be in the infantry and you're going to be in combat, you're better off to go right into an infantry unit and you stay in an infantry unit for your whole time because they train and they train and they train. And there's no time to think about what you're going to do. You can't do that. So that's the better thing. A lot of people don't like that. People gravitate to the easiest thing you can do. But yeah, there's a good chance you'll be in combat, you should stay with the professionals and learn.
It must have at least been a beautiful place.
Alaska? Oh yes, it was very nice. Very large bears on Kodiak Island, big as Volkswagens.
You run into any?
No, but we were, like I said, we were on a base. It was the headquarters for the Alaskan Command had their headquarters there.
I see.
So, no, I did not see any. I saw a lot of stuffed ones in stores and stuff. But, yeah, eagles you saw all the time. It was a really beautiful place, yes. We were there right after the earthquake in '64, the Good Friday earthquake. We got there in November, and they were still having aftershocks.
Really?
And they had one big one, it came down, you could hear it coming. It's like thunder, and all of a sudden the wall lockers, which they're double wall lockers, and you take two guys to move them around, they just danced across the floor, yeah, so. But that was the only one that you actually felt. They have them lots of times, but only machines could pick them up, so.
So how did you find your way to Vietnam from there?
I volunteered to go to Vietnam.
Did you?
Figured I was going to go anyways. So, might as well get it over with.
So, from Alaska, did you go directly to an assignment in Vietnam?
No, I went home for a month.
I see.
30 days. You got 30 days, leave a year. And then you went to San Diego, and we took a troop ship. And the rumor was it was one of the first troop ships that took Japanese or American troops home from Japan after VJ Day. It was a very old saltwater showers. It was old, and I even had a picture. It's a picture on the internet of it, and there's a story about it, of that specific ship, not of the class, because they made them by the maybe thousands. I don't know. They made a lot of those, but it was just a big article on that ship with that name. So it was that was interesting.
How long did it take to get from San Diego to Vietnam?
I would say pushing 2 to 3 weeks.
I see.
We stopped in Hawaii to pick up Army troops, but just overnight. Then we pushed on. But it stopped one time in the middle of the ocean, bobbed up and down, and they had us all come up. And one of the crew members had been killed in a car accident, and they had him in the reefer or whatever, keep him cold, and they buried him. He wanted to be buried at sea, so they buried him.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and then we went on maybe a couple more days, and it stopped again. Well, this time it broke down. It was broke. So they fixed it, and we went on, and we got off. I don't know where we docked, whether it was Da Nang, what Marines were north. But then we got on an LST to go to Chulai, and that hit something. It's a reef or something under the water. And it took on water, but it was not a big deal. They had equipment, large artillery and stuff in the hold. They really didn't want to get wet, but what are you going to do? Don't hit the reef, I guess, is the thing there. And then you went to an outfit. You were just assigned. The guy that, there was an article on the internet, which I couldn't find again. In a picture that troop ship was lined up, and he was talking about when he got to Vietnam, they were putting rifles together from piles of rifles, and armorers were there, and they handed you a rifle. And I was in that line. I saw that. And the other thing was when you got your web gear, ponchos and stuff, a lot of them had blood on them from other Marines. And we did find out later that early March, the Marines were on 2 big operations, and they lost almost 100 Marines in each operation. That's killed. That's not wounded. That's killed. So that was heavy. That was heavy fighting, and you could read those company daily reports on the computer. I stumble onto them. I look for a long time, and it's all how you put it in the search engine. You know, sometimes you get the same thing, but finally I hit it. It was a University of Texas put the daily logs were all on there, and you could read them. And some days nothing happened. Next day there'd be this big. You had 3 officers killed and 82 Marines and 3 corpsmen. I mean, but it's all boiled down to just numbers on a piece of paper. That's all it was. You know, there was next day maybe nothing went on. So it's interesting to read, but not so interesting if you're in it.
Right. How much were you following the news and national events at that time? Not at all. The only news I saw, I'm a big Bob Dylan fan, was back then too. We're digging holes, foxholes around the inside of the wire on Chulai. There's a magazine laying there. I don't know where it came from. It was in good shape. Wouldn't have been it. The last guy. It was a Playboy. And in the Playboy was, of course, pictures of naked women, but it was a Bob Dylan interview. And more people were interested in that Bob Dylan interview than they were in anything else because, you know, he was an up-and-comer there. And, yeah, I remember that. I don't know what happened to the magazine. You know, lots of times you don't come back to the same hole. You go some other place down the road a little bit. So the task at hand was to contain communism. That was what we were there for. And you didn't have any thoughts about that at that age?
No, I don't recall. I have lots of thoughts on the Vietnam War now as you're in hindsight, but no, I've read books and on that, and a lot of deception, a lot of the higher ups not being told the absolute truth about how things were going, and just keep escalating and escalating. But yet you'd escalate over here, but you could see the MiGs parked on the field over there, but you weren't allowed to attack them. You were like, it was, you could do this today, but not that. It was micromanaged.
I see.
It wasn't managed by the guy on the ground, you know, the commander on the ground.
So did you see combat in Vietnam?
I did.
Can you tell me about that?
Most of the combat I saw was you'd be walking along and you'd hear mortars explode, and you, of course, down. Then you get up, walk some more. Sometimes you'd hear a rifle shot, sometimes not.
that was pretty much it. I shot at one guy. I saw his head on the side of a hill, and I shot at him. I don't know if I hit him because it was so overgrown there, and they said, you ain't going up there and look. He's dead. If he ain't, he ain't. And we don't care. We'll move on. But you want me to tell you the wounded story?
I do.
Okay. We were on a mission. We landed helicopters. The helicopters were they looked like grasshoppers. I don't know what they were called. They were before the modern helicopter. No doors, no windows. Bunch of people in there, 8, 10 maybe. And you're coming in, and you could see, you figure this is where you're going to land. It's only a clear spot around, but it's being artillery. And you could see the artillery rounds going off, and you're getting closer. You're getting closer. It's like, I hope this is coordinated. And it was. You got out. And we were there one night, and the next day we were sitting there doing nothing, waiting for something to happen. Sergeant come over, I said, I need 3, 4, 5, whatever it was. You, and you. Okay, saddle up. So we did. Walking down a trail, and it was more, not jungle there, it was more, I call them highlands, not jungle scrub, but it could get thick, but you wouldn't think of it as jungle. And we're walking, I'm the second guy back. And I turned my head to the left, and there was a large flash. I don't remember any sound, but the flash was large. So I stumbled forward, fell down, and the only thing I could see was the back of my hand. There was just a little nick. And I'm laying there, and I go, okay, God, I'm going to need some help with this one. So you laid there just a little bit, you turn around and look, and of course there's a smoking hole here, and blood everywhere. And you go, wow, this is not good. And I saw, my mind said, there's white smoke behind you. There's probably all kinds of smoke. Your mind goes to, you have 3 fragmentation hand grenades and a white phosphorus hand grenade. So your mind tells you that white phosphorus hand grenade is going to blow up, and you're going to burn to death because you can't put it out. It makes such a big covering area that everybody would have got covered. So I jumped up, and I dropped my, you have a harness like on, carries your cartridge belt, your canteens and stuff. Dropped that, everything came right off. And I don't know if I stumbled or my mind says I ran. I didn't run very far. Flopped down, turned over on my back, and I'm looking up at this guy. And unbeknownst to me, as soon as this happens, there's always Navy corpsmen, like Army medics, only they're Navy. Marine Corps is part of the Navy. So the doctors and the nurses and those kind of people, that their job is to keep you alive until they can get you to the surgery. So I'm laying there, and all of a sudden there's 2 heads, one on each side. The first guy says, give him morphine. Second guy says, no, you don't give morphine with a head wound. The other guy says, look at his leg, give him morphine. So they did. And they're cutting my clothes off. I had a severed artery in my calf. They put a tourniquet on that. And I've still got one boot on because there's a piece of shrapnel stuck between my little toe and the next toe, which it actually shortened the toe up about that big and made it go this way.
Oh my.
So then they do whatever, they secure you, they went on to the other people. You're laying there and the sergeant comes over. Of course you got nothing on it. He looks down and he goes, oh. I go, oh, is everything still there? And he goes, yeah, barely. Well, I didn't know at the time I had 2 compound fractures in my leg. One at the knee and one at the ankle, and I had multiple shrapnel wounds. And the head wound that they were worried about was a tiny little cut that bled like crazy. You know, that caught their eye right away because head wounds are bad things. So that helicopter came pretty quick. They load you on the helicopter. I don't know how many other people they loaded on. There was 4. There was a guy in front of me. He got hit in the back. The 2 behind me, they took shrapnel from the front. So we go to Chulai, that's the nearest place. They bring me into the X-ray And there was a fellow in there who was black. And he's dicking around. He's hollering to himself about somebody moved his x-ray machine. Somebody moved his x-ray machine. And I called him a bad name, and I said, let's get on the road here, guy. Come on. So that was all I remember. You're in there. Now you wake up. And I've had quite a few surgeries on different things, and always you can hear before you can see or move. So I finally wake up, and I'm looking around, and I look on there's a little table there, and there's a little olive drab bag, not very big, which later was my watch and my glasses and stuff. And on the side of the bag is a little printed thing. And I took a good look at it, and it goes, condition of body, members missing. And I go, okay, let's do a member check here. Let's make sure we're all together here. And I was. The leg was, I don't think I don't think they did, because there was open wounds. I don't think they ever put a cast on. I actually got back to the States. They put a traction for either 6 or 8 weeks. And then they took us to, going to fly us to Da Nang. And I don't know whether it was Da Nang or from Chulai, but you're laying on the runway there with other wounded people, and you're holding your own IV bottle up in the air. Apparently they run out of IV racks.
Oh, no.
So it's funny at the time, and not so much. So then you went to Da Nang, and you were only in Da Nang a very short time, because it was an injury. They knew it was an injury that was not going to be healed in a month or so. You weren't coming back. So they flew us to Clark in the Philippines. That was an Air Force hospital. That was very nice, but see how things have changed. An orthopedic surgeon looked at me, and he left. The older guy, he came back in, and he goes, anybody see my cigar? And I go, no, sir, but I said, the leg's hurting pretty good. Could I get a pain shot? He goes, yeah, sure, nurse, give him a pain shot. And she goes, well, he just had one. And the doctor goes, oh, he's a big boy, he can take it. So they give me another pain shot. So I wasn't there an awful long time. They stabilized you. They cleaned you up there, too. You were still blood all over under your fingernails and stuff.
Oh, my.
They don't monkey with that the other place.
Right.
So then there was a transport plane, and I believe, I'm not sure, but I think it was a 707 converted to military use. The front part of the plane had seats, people with an arm in a sling maybe, or a bandage on their head. Not hurt too bad. And then I was in the outside racks with people that are hurt more, but not going to die. And you look over in the middle, and that's where they put the no arms, no legs, comatose. They were in the middle of the plane. So we flew Clark to Yokosuka, Japan, and then we flew all the way. I didn't know a plane could fly that far without stopping. We flew all the way to Travis Air Force Base in California. Then we flew, and I don't know, it was the same day or what it was. We flew to a place in Colorado, and then we flew to Great Lakes Naval Hospital number 13 outside of Chicago, because my parents had moved. They now lived in Midland, Michigan. So, but after I was wounded, there's a gap there. It's not like today. It could be instant communications. There's a gap. So my mother, they lived out in the country, and she hears a dog barking. She goes outside. And she turned on the outside light, and there stands a Marine, dress uniform. And she said, the first thing I said is he dead? And he goes, no, he's not. And the bad part about it, nobody knew. They just moved there, and nobody knew really where they lived. And for some reason, it was dark. The guy had an awful time. He almost had to go house to house looking. And my mother said everybody in that road knew a bad thing had happened. But, and then the next day the sheriff came with an identical telegram, which I had framed on the wall.
Oh,
a lot of typing errors, misspellings, but that's right. So, and then I was at Great Lakes for a couple of months. Then they let you go home for a month, because they say you'll heal a lot more in a month at home than you will in a month in the hospital. Nurses' station was up to the front. That's where all the people that weren't going to get any better were up there. I was back here. The nurse was in charge of the ward, wanted me moved up with those guys because it was more military. Doctor said no. And there was an argument right there that, well, I'm a major and you're a captain. He says, yeah, maybe, but I'm the doctor. And if I put him, who's going to get better, up with those guys who aren't, it's going to delay his recovery because you could hear him moaning and they were in rough shape. So eventually they took the cast off, or not cast, Chachon, got to go to the bathroom, take a shower. So you go in there, and you really haven't seen yourself in weeks. You go in there, and you start talking to the guy in the mirror because you don't recognize him. And he's you. You're the only guy in there.
Oh, no.
And I've got a picture at home of what I looked like. Maybe in August, I had lost a tremendous amount of weight, which you'd think you wouldn't do because you're not doing anything to burn any calories. Yet they let you eat. They don't care about that. So that was pretty much it. Then they sent you on to Cherry Point, and that's where I finished out my tour. A couple of years.
So you never really returned to active duty?
Well, yes. Actually, what we were, there was a bombing range outside of Cherry Point. They dropped inert ordnance. They called it loft bombing, where they would almost fly back, make a big loop, and they would let the bomb go like this, and they loft the bomb, and then they would fly the other direction, and they really couldn't hit much. And that's what they call it, loft bombing. And actually, it was like a house. It was an old house on an old abandoned World War II base. It's still there, though. You could see it from Google. Mm-hmm. And that's what we did. One time, Air Force pilots come down and, for some reason, didn't know that was a range for inert ordnance, and they dropped live ammunition.
Oh, no.
The locals were not happy because nobody got hurt, but there was a road that went right by the range. And if you're big enough ordnance, you'll throw shrapnel a long way and go right through a car metal. That wouldn't stop that. So, but that was pretty much it. Then I got out. The last thing was, when we were at Cherry Point, we had a warrant officer, a listed man who became an officer. Mm-hmm. He wasn't commissioned, he was warranted. So when you go to get out, they'll say, okay, anybody here who isn't as good as when they come in? And yes, me, okay. So you're going before a major, and the major's, oh, you'll be fine. Yeah, not a problem, you'll be all right. So we get outside, and the warrant officer goes, okay, don't listen to him. You get out, go to your local VA and do that. So I did, and I had a 30% disability from 1969. Now it's 40%. It's gone up. They replaced the knee a couple years ago, and they said it needed to be replaced because of the injury that when you broke it across the knee, that weakened it. So, and I'm very satisfied with the VA treatment. I was amazed. I never joined them, and when I did, the guy said, "You've had a disability for almost 50 years. Where have you been?" I go, well, regular doctors, I guess, and I've had nothing but good luck with them. I know some people don't like them, but I'm very satisfied. Mm-hmm. Very satisfied.
Well, that was a life-changing experience in Vietnam then.
Mm-hmm.
You were one of the lucky ones, though, in many ways.
Yes. I know. Not maybe 5-6 years ago, stepbrother, son from my mother's second marriage. He was a career soldier in Iraq, and he was supposed to come home. He was killed. Dad only had a couple weeks left to go, and he was killed. So and that's all. I think there was only one from Akron that was killed. But there's websites you can go on, and they will tell you by state the names of the people. You can go on there and you put the name in, and they will tell you more than you want to know. Where killed, but then they'll tell you condition of body, how killed, small arms fire, accident, whatever. So it's really more than you want to know. Mm-hmm. But when you get to like New York City, Salamanca had 4 killed from that area. New York City, you just scroll and scroll.
Yeah,
and
for a long time.
Yeah, so when I was when I was at the Loft bombing range with a Marine who was a twin, and then he left to go to Hawaii, and I called him after I was out of service and talked to his mother, and she said, "Did you know his twin was killed in Vietnam?" I said, "No, I did not, ma'am." And so that stuff happens.
Do you have flashbacks from your experience in Vietnam?
No, I have not flashbacks. I have dreams where you have to go back in the service.
Really?
Yes. And your mind at the beginning, well, I did this before. I could do this again. Well, that's 50-some years later. The only flashbacky thing that there's a girl here I liked in Akron, and it didn't work out, but I had a dream, and she's coming towards me, and I'm going towards her, and she blew up.
Oh my!
Yeah, no, that was a scary little deal.
Yeah.
But that's the only time that the two kind of intermingled, because those two things don't go together.
No. So you weren't out of the service very long before you got married.
No, I got out in end of June, and I came back here, and actually, I don't know if you know Walt Rezanowski. His wife wasn't she was going to marry another fellow who was my best friend. She introduced me to my wife, and that's how that happened. Yeah, we were married 48 years, and then she passed away. So.
I'm sorry. Was she from this area?
Yes, she actually lived, the house that we bought, she lived next door. People that lived in that house, that whole neighborhood, they were all kids and played together and all. Yes, everybody knew everybody. Now, for a while, there were no children in the neighborhood. Now, people have moved in, and there's tons of them. That's all you hear all day long is kid noise.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me, but before you didn't hear it at all because there weren't any. They were all older people. Now they've all died off, and new people move in.
So your wife's name was Judy.
Yes.
Can you tell me about her?
We were married in the church next door here. I've been a church member, be 50 years this year. She was from when she could first go to church. She went there. She worked a number of secretarial jobs, and she'd come home one day and she said, "The doctor said I have a liver disease." I go, okay, so, well, and it didn't bother her until when she had her 50th reunion in 65, then it hit her like a truck, and she deteriorated. That's not what killed her, but it exacerbated every other thing she had wrong with her, which she had a lot wrong with her. And eventually she was in the hospital, and we knew this. Didn't think it was the end, but knew it was coming, and she aspirated liquid into her lungs, and her heart stopped breathing. And they brought her back, but when I got there, they said it took too long. They said, "We're pretty sure there's brain damage." So she was in ICU for three days. Her sister got here from California. Of course, she had the meeting, and then the next day the day after that, we let her go.
And you have 2 children.
Yes, they both live in town.
So they're adults and married themselves now.
Yes.
Stephanie and Dena?
Yes.
Can you tell me about them?
Stephanie is she's a clinical social worker. She has her own practice in Williamsville. She has 2 children, Aiden and Lucy. Dena works for the Buffalo Sabres, downtown Buffalo. She has 2 children. The oldest one is the oldest of the grandchildren. His name is Jack. And then the younger one is, that's Ethan. So we have 4.
So you have 4 grandchildren?
Yes.
Is that how you're spending your time these days?
More with the littlest one. She's 2nd grade. So, yeah, she comes to my house after school a few days, and they ferry her around because the father is a project manager for Color Technology, so he usually doesn't get home till 6 o'clock. And the mother works Stephanie works a lot of evenings for the social work part.
I see.
And I have to ferry people, she's in a lot of activities, so she needs a ride. They could pick her up, but they need somebody to get her there.
Well, that must be pleasant duty for Granddad.
Sometimes she's quite active. She's quite active. She's one of those kids who if you have 27 water-soluble markers and one Sharpie hidden in the cellar up on a beam, she'll find that one Sharpie.
Oh, my.
And she'll go walking by and go, where did you get that? Oh, it's downstairs. I found it. Why were you where that was? I knew where that was. There's no reason for you to be there. But that's how that works, yes.
Yes, kids will be kids.
Yes.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, Stephen. I thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for listening in, and remember to tune in to the next episode of Remembering Akron.